Being average sucks. I'm a believer that the enemy of greatness in life is good. Here's the
Average
problem.
man inspires no one. You will not be satisfied with the standards and expectations of average.
If I accept average advice from average people who are living average lives, can I expect to be anything other than average? Average, 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 average.
It was late 2018. I was still a teenager. I think it was 8 p.m. My dad asked me if I wanted to go with him, run some errands. I agreed. It's been a while since I went with him anyway. After getting some groceries, he meets this guy. I didn't know him. He was in his late 30s, I would say. He was a bit chubby, starting to bald, and had thick glasses. I was sitting in the backseat of the car watching them talk on the other side of the street. And then it started to rain, or rather pour. It was so strong you couldn't hear anything but the rain itself. So they came inside the car to continue their conversation. It was about money, as usual. He was struggling a bit. His wife always wanted more, but he didn't have that much. Also, he was really worried about his children. He knew he wouldn't be able to provide as much as he would want for them. And I remember looking at him from the back while he's talking next to my father and thinking to myself, I'd rather die than grow up and be like this. Be average. Maybe surprising, but average can mean a lot of things. And depending on the context, the meaning changed drastically. The first meaning is the factual one, where the average is supposed to represent the common American, and this is what those guys push and use to get you.
Look, guys, the average American is fat, 90 IQ, right? Stupid, doesn't understand what's going on geopolitically, internationally, doesn't even know how many branches of government we got, and is on TikTok all day.
And here is where actually they have an argument. No one wants to be that, nor should they. But is that what it's always about? And will they tell you to be satisfied when you get up there?
That's what I learned most from it. Like, no matter how much talent you got, if you ain't willing to put the work in, then everybody catch up to you.
So you think that LeBron just works harder than everybody else?
Yeah,
People say that about Kobe too.
yeah. I think those guys have a fear of being average.
Here we see the meaning of average changing. Here average means a lot of things, but not the average we talked about before. So what does average represent here? Why some have innate disgust toward average, and how do you deal with it? If you have it. Back in the day, and I mean the Savannah days, not the 90s, being average meant something very different than it does today. If you look at this from an evolutionary standpoint, a lot starts to make sense. In nature, average is not neutral. Imagine you are a deer. Running speed is not a personality trait. It's the difference between life and death. If you are faster than average, you are more likely to survive predator attacks. If you survive, you're more likely to reproduce, and if you reproduce, your traits, genetic and behavioral, are more likely to be passed on. So in that environment, being above average is directly rewarded by natural selection. But here is the crucial point people often miss. Evolution does not select for excellence in general. It selects for traits that increase survival relative to the environment. In a context where speed matters, speed becomes valuable. In a context where cooperation matters, cooperation becomes valuable. In a context where endurance matters, endurance wins. Average only becomes dangerous when the environment makes it dangerous. Now, over time, organisms that survive weren't just fast. They were also motivated by fear, stress, and discomfort to avoid falling behind. This doesn't mean evolution selected for hating being average as a conscious idea. What it selected for were psychological mechanisms like sensitivity to status, fear of exclusion, responsiveness to competition, and motivation under threat. These mechanisms feel like fear of being average today, so the anxiety of not being enough isn't random. It's the modern psychological expression of ancient pressure. And yes, now average means not being enough. However, the way this pressure was expressed depended heavily on culture, which brings us to the next question. If this fear is so deeply rooted, why does it feel so modern? One major reason is how societies distribute rewards. In highly competitive, outcome-centered systems, especially modern capitalism, results are everything. Rankings, metrics, income, visibility. In the top 1% and the top 10% is enormous. The difference between being average and exceptional is not gradual, it's exponential. This creates a winner-takes-it-most environment.
Okay, but what we have now, we have a situation where the top 1/10 of 1% now owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%.
Compare that to societies with stronger social democratic values. In countries like Germany, for example, social respect is more closely tied to sincerity, contribution, and effort. A doctor who quits medicine to chase extreme wealth might be celebrated in the US, but viewed negatively in Germany. Not because ambition is bad, but because abandoning social responsibility is. So the more a society centers results, the more being average feels like failure. And now add social media. Social media doesn't show reality, it shows extremes, the top 1% and occasionally the bottom 1%, but almost never the middle. You don't see the normal life that works, you see the exceptional life that sells. And when that's what you consume daily, your brain recalibrates. You start to believe, these are the only lives worth living, these are the only stories worth telling, and everything else is irrelevant. In that psychological landscape, average doesn't mean normal. Average feels like disappearance, like social death, and that's why today being average doesn't just feel unsatisfying, it feels like existential threat. We now understand where the fear of average comes from and how some use it to manipulate us. But now, how do we deal with this, you may ask? Here's a distinction that changed how I look at almost everything in my life. I first heard about this from the Jack Church version, Alex Hormozy. There are problems and there are dilemmas. A problem has a solution. You're hungry, so you eat. You're tired, so you sleep. There's a threat, you remove it. Once it's solved, it's gone. But some things don't work like that. A dilemma is something that doesn't disappear. It's built into life. You don't solve it and move on. You face it again tomorrow, and then the day after that. Chronic pain is a clear example here. For many people, it never fully goes away. Medicine can reduce the intensity, maybe make it manageable, but it does not eliminate it. So treating it like a problem only creates frustration. The moment you realize it's a dilemma, the strategy changes. The goal is no longer to eliminate it, but to manage it. The fear of being average works the same way. You can improve, grow, and achieve, but the fear will always be there. So the mistake is trying to erase it.
I think you know.
I think I'm quite average.
You're not average. You're lost.